Namaskar and good evening. I welcome you all on 9th day of ICR National Institute of Agriculture Economics and Policy Research webinar series on quantitative methods for social sciences. As you know, forecasting or predicting future values based on previously observed value is important for any business organization, research organization, or policymakers. And for that purpose, one needs to abreast with various methods of time series analysis. Today, we will learn about time series analysis, various methods, and also some practical examples for better understanding. Now, I request my co-host, Dr. Abhimanyu, to introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Vinayak Nikam, for introducing the topic. Good evening to all. For today's lecture, we have with us Dr. Ranjit Kumar Paul. He is an agricultural statistician working as a senior scientist at ICR, Indian Agricultural Statistics Research Institute, New Delhi. Prior to this, he served in Indian Statistical Service. He is fellow of National Academy of Agriculture Sciences and recipient of Young Scientist Award in Social Science by National Academy of Agriculture Sciences, as well as from Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Dr. Paul is mainly working in the area of statistical modeling, nonlinear time series, machine learning, and climate change. Now I request Dr. Ranjit sir to start his lecture.
Very good afternoon, everyone. So thank you, Dr. Binayak and Dr. Abhimanyu, for your nice gesture and giving me this opportunity to talk on time series modeling. So straight away, we will be starting the class. We have around 1.5 hours time. We will be covering the linear time series analysis, nonlinear time series analysis, and also some combination of the models and their application in the real data sets coming from the agriculture. So I'm just sharing one presentation with you all, and then we'll be talking on this. Time series modeling. I guess that the participants who are attending this webinar, they have idea about the regression modeling, because time series modeling requires the knowledge of regression modeling, their assumptions, and the way of application of the regression models in real data analysis. Just like regression, in time series model also, I mean, the model represent it's a system, and it has several types of modeling we can come across, like empirical modeling, regression modeling. There are stochastic models like this, machine learning, and our focus of discussion today is the time series. Now, in time series, you know, to define a time series, when we collect the observations on a particular variable over time point, over equal or equidistant time point, then we say that that particular data is a time series data. Basically, the time series data contains observations on a single phenomena which has to be observed over multiple time periods. And in the time series, both the value as well as ordering of the data points have the meaning. You know, there are different components of the time series as we come across with a real data sets. The time series may contain the trend, it may contain the seasonal part, it may contain the cyclical part, and also it contains the irregular variations that goes to the error term or unobserved component. Now, you know, whenever we come across any statistical models, as long as it is in the parametric domain, every statistical model is based on some crucial assumptions. Until and unless those assumptions are satisfied, in general, we cannot get the precise interpretation for the model under consideration. For example, if you just consider the regression model, in the regression model, you know, the data set has to come, the dependent variable or the study variable has to follow the Gaussian distribution, and the errors of the regression model should be IIT normal with a zero mean and a constant variance sigma square. Now, similar to that, in time series models also, as because this is also a parametric model, we will be discussing the parametric model. So, this also has some crucial assumptions. So before you start the analyzing the data sets, you must ensure that the data is following the assumptions made for a particular model before you actually call that model to be applied for your data. Now, time series model can be broadly classified into two domains. One is called linear models and one is the non-linear models. In case of the linear model, both linear as well as non-linear we'll be discussing today. In the linear model, the most widely used technique is of course the ARIMA model, that is called autoregressive integrated moving average model, or we say this is Box-Jenkins models. There are other linear models like exponential moving. In the nonlinear domain, we have the popularly known model, that ARCH model, that is autoregressive conditional heteroscedastic model, or the generalized autoregressive conditional heteroscedastic model, or it is says GARDS model. And of course, there are some non-parametric machine learning technique like ANN, artificial neural network, which can also accommodate the non-linearity present in the dataset. Now, as we are discussing that whenever we apply any statistical model, particularly the parametric statistical model, this model is based on some crucial assumptions, just like regression model. Here in time series also, whenever we apply some linear kind of time series model like ARIMA model, that is autoregressive integrated moving average methodology given by Box et al. This model is also, assumes some assumptions. And the first assumptions, of course, by the name itself, as we are calling upon the linear time series model, so the linearity must follow. That means whatever data we are collecting, whatever variable we are considering, the pattern of the variable over the time point must follow a linear pattern. If it shows the linearity, then we can see for the other assumptions. And the second assumptions for this model is of course the stationarity. Stationarity is a statistical term. In a crude way, you can understand that stationarity means up to second order statistics is constant for a particular data set or for a particular variable. Second order statistics of course includes the mean, variance and the covariance. So when we say that up to second order statistics it is constant, then we are indicating that this is weak stationarity. In general, in all of the practical application of the time series model, we generally ensure that there is a weak stationarity in the data set. That means up to second order statistics for the variable under consideration is constant over time period. And this is called stationarity. Now, so what we understand that before we apply this kind of model for a data under consideration, we must validate these assumptions. That means our data should validate these two assumptions. Our data should follow a linear pattern over the time period. And secondly, our data must show weak stationarity in the sense that it has to have constant mean and variance, also covariance over the time point. Now, the question may arise that in case of stationarity, if a data set is having a constant mean and constant variance or covariance over the time point, that means the data set is quite stable. So what is the need for the forecasting? Or what is the need for checking the stationarity, in the sense that if you are saying that the data is having a constant variance and constant mean and constant covariance over the time point, so forecasting would be very easy in that case. Because for a particular univariate time series or univariate variable, if you compute the mean and variance and also the covariance between any two lags, you will find that mean is constant, variance of a univariate series will also be a constant. But here, how do we check stationarity? Is that we bifurcate the series or we make different subsets of the series. And for each of the series, we try to compute the mean and variance and then plot that mean and variance over the time point. So you will see that there is some pattern existed in this mean and variances. In the practical demonstration of our data set, we will show you or we will discuss that how this stationarity can be achieved or how this stationarity can be ensured for the data under consideration, if at all you are not going for any statistical test. But of course, there are many statistical tests available in any of the software packages. So any of the statistical tests we can apply for the data under consideration in order to ensure that stationarity of the data set holds. Now, this is an example of stationary and non-stationary data. The first plot, if you see, the first plot is obviously a non-stationary data because you see the pattern of the data set is it's increasing. Overall, it is increasing. So the mean is increasing definitely, and the variability is not constant, because over the time point, if you see in some region, wherever there is a sudden dip in the data set or in the observations, there the variability would be much higher in comparison to the other time epochs. So the variability is also non-constant, and mean is definitely non-constant, because mean is a increasing function here in this case. Go to the second plot, the right hand side, you will see this plot. It is almost a stationary data, because if you draw a mean, a straight line, it will go around x equals to 0. Okay. So the x-axis. So the x-axis would be the mean here. That means the mean is constant, and also the variability, though exactly it is not constant, in some time epochs the variability is higher. So in these situations, what we have to see is, if by visual inspection you are not ensuring that the variability is constant or variance is constant, you need to call for some statistical test in order to test that your data, the variance and covariance of the data set is constant. For that, you have to call for some statistical test. But it is to keep in mind that in statistics, we generally ensure the validity of the assumptions in approximate sense. That means if the variability is approximately constant, or if the variability or the variance and covariance are approaching towards constant, we say that our data is stationary, and we can go ahead for further application of this model. Otherwise, we have several statistical tests. I have listed here two, like augmented Dickey-Fuller test, that is ADF test. The other test, namely Phillips-Perron test, that is PP test. Another important test is KPSS test also. So all these three tests are available in R, in SAS, in any other software packages. Here today we will be using R, and we will be explaining the application of these tests in order to ensure the stationarity of the data under consideration. Now, after ensuring that data has become stationary, if at all our data is non-stationary, that means before we apply this model to the data under consideration, we need to ensure that our data has a stationary nature. If it is non-stationary, so we need to apply some kind of transformation in order to make our non-stationary data to a stationary one. So transformation in time series is in general in the kind of differentiation or differencing. So if you just go for first order differencing or second order differencing and check for stationarity, we can ensure that after what particular number of differencing our data has become stationary, and then we can further go ahead for application of the model. Now, so this is the form of the ARIMA model. ARIMA stands for Autoregressive Integrated Moving Average Model, which is also known as the Box-Jenkins model. And this is the form that phi L yt equals to 1 minus L to the power minus d into theta L et, where yt is of course our univariate series, that is the study variable or response variable or dependent variable, whatever you say. Et is white noise. In general, it is IID noise. Phi L and theta L, these are the two polynomials for autoregressive and moving average respectively. So this is the mathematical details of the model, though for application of the model through using software packages, we need not to bother about the mathematical form. Only thing is you need to know that what are the variables to be included in the model in order to apply this model in the practical application. Now, for any statistical model, starting from the regression model to very complex nonlinear model, we have few steps to follow, and these steps should be followed in this order only. So first of all, in the first step for model building, we need to identify the model. In a regression setup also, if you have say more than 10 regressor variables in a model and you need to develop a regression model for the prediction purpose, then first of all you need to identify which of the regressor variables should be included in the model, or which of the regressor variables are contributing significantly towards the variability of the response variable. So by that way, we identify the model and then go for the parameter estimation. Similarly, in case of the time series model, model identification does necessarily mean that you identify the proper order of the model. For example, if we are dealing with a univariate series, for example, yield of a particular crop or price of a particular commodity in a particular market, so we have a univariate series, that means a single variable collected over different time point. Okay, so in model identification, we need to identify the order of the autoregression, the order of the moving average, and also the order of the differencing. By visualizing the functional form of the model, you can see there is a component called phi L. So this is the polynomial of autoregression. There is a parameter called D, which is nothing but the order of differencing. If your data is not a stationary one, in most of the cases, we see that our data does not follow the stationarity assumption. So some kind of differentiation, some kind of transformation is needed in order to make your non-stationary data to a stationary one. So D stands for the differencing, number of differencing. Then comes theta L, which is nothing but the polynomial of moving average order, moving average. So the order of autoregression, order of moving average, and also order of differencing. These three orders need to be identified in model identification stage. Once you are done with that, there are ways to identify the model. In general, we use the plots in order to identify the model. The first thing is that whenever you are validating the assumptions meant for a particular model in terms of stationarity in particular, then you are already computing the order of differencing, that is D. For example, if my data is non-stationary and if you need one order differencing to make my non-stationary data to a stationary one, then my D will be 1. So order of differencing is 1. If second order differencing is required in order to make non-stationary data to a stationary one, then D will be 2. So like this, whenever you are validating the assumptions for the model in ARIMA model building, at the first hand, you have already computed the value for D. So the other two order, that is AR order and the MA order, autoregressive order, and second one is called moving average order. So these two orders need to be identified in the first stage, that is model identification stage. And to identify the order of these two autoregression and moving average, we use two plots, namely autocorrelation plot and partial autocorrelation plot. So these are the two plots. In regression setup, we know the correlation and partial correlation. Similarly, in time series, our two terms will be autocorrelation and partial autocorrelation. So the thing which we need to remember is that the partial autocorrelation function plot, that is called PACF, partial autocorrelation function, it actually identifies the order of AR, that is order of autoregression, and the other plot, which is known as autocorrelation plot, that is ACF, autocorrelation function. This plot will identify the order of moving average. So two plot and two order to identify, observe each plot and identify the order of the corresponding autoregression as well as moving average. So this is the preliminary order identification of the model. After you identify the model, then you go for estimation stage. Second stage is called estimation. In the parameter estimation stage, there are several estimation techniques available. So any of the estimation technique you can call for. Nonlinear least square, there is a least square, there is Gaussian-Fils method. Any of the estimation technique you call for and estimate the unknown parameters in the model. So once it is done, the third stage is called diagnostic checking, which is very much important from model building point of view. If your interest is to forecast by using this particular model, then diagnostic checking or the validation of the model is a very important step in model building. So for this step, what we do is, at the beginning, if we have say 100 observations at the beginning, we make two subsets of the data set. The first set we call it as a training data, and the second set we call it as a testing data or validation set. So from the training data, by utilizing the training data, we will be identifying the model and also we will be estimating the unknown parameters of the model. Now in the diagnostic checking or validation, it is generally done in terms of the residuals by utilizing the residuals. So first of all, you have to see whether the residuals are following IID or it is white noise, whether there is any autocorrelation existing in the residuals, and also the normality assumptions of the residuals. Because you know, whenever we write down the model, in the model, when we write down the error term, that is in terms of ET or that is in terms of epsilon t, whatever nomenclature, whatever symbol you are using, this is actually error term in the model. And we assume that the error should follow IID normal 0 sigma square, or it will be white noise. So, but the errors are unobserved. Actually, the errors are unobserved until and unless you feed the model, until and unless you compute the residuals coming out from that model, you cannot actually validate the assumptions for the error term. Because from the residuals only, you can check whether your residuals coming out from this particular fitted model, they are following IID noise 0 sigma square, or they are having normality distribution with a mean 0 and a constant variance sigma square, and also whether they are independent or not. So all these assumptions have to be checked out after you estimate your model in the third stage, at the validation stage. Besides this, as we were telling that in the beginning you need to form two sets. First set is for the estimations and second set is for the testing or validation. So in the diagnostic checking, once the model goes through all this path, the next stage what we do is for the forecasting. In the forecasting, what we do, basically we forecast for the observations kept in the validation set. That means if, for example, we have 100 observations, say 90% of the observations we keep in the estimations test set, and the 10% of the observations we keep in the validation set. So based on the 90% of the observations, we will be identifying the model, we will be estimating the parameters, and based on that estimated parameters, we will be forecasting for the 10% of the observations which has kept aside in the validation set. Now, so for the validation set, you have the actual values, and you have also got the forecasted value from the model you build up. Now you have the ways to judge the strength of your model in terms of the forecasting. You can tally how close your forecast observations are with your actual observations. You compute some of the statistics. In general, we compute the mean percentage error or mean absolute percentage error, or we say that MAP value, mean absolute percentage error values. There are other statistics also we can compute, like MAC, RMAC, mean error, mean absolute error, mean percent error, like this. There are many statistics will be coming out, and you have to judge, you have to examine that whether that percentage error is within the range or not. There is no strict rule, but generally thumb rule is that if the percentage error lies between, below 10%, then we say that the performance of the model is good, and you can go ahead with this particular model in order to forecast for the future values. So if you are not satisfied, for example, you're in the validation stage, you are getting so many percentage of the error, a huge percentage error, 30%, 40% or so, then again you have to go back to the model identification stage in order to see that whether some of the important orders are missing, or your order identification is not proper, or your data set does not follow the assumptions of the model which you are applying here. There may be so many reasons. For that reasons, the validation stage fails. That means either you are getting a huge percentage error, or you may also get that your residuals does not follow the assumptions meant for the error term in the model. So then again you have to fine tune your model in terms of model identification. Maybe some of the variables which are important variables, they have been ignored in the model identification stage, because you know, in a ARIMA setup we generally deal with the univariate series, but also we have the ways to include other information like other exogenous variable if you have. For example, yield of a crop, if you want to model the yield of a crop over the time point, over the year say, then you know that yield of a crop is determined by so many factors. So if you can include other factors like say temperature, say rainfall, say any other factors which you feel that they must have some significant impact on the crop yield, then those information can be incorporated in the model itself. So those information if you include, maybe your forecast performance improve. Likewise, so this is another way to go for fitting the ARIMA model. First of all, you postulate a general class of ARIMA model, identify the model which can be tentatively entertained. That means by visualizing the autocorrelation function plot, by visualizing the partial autocorrelation function plot, all these plot, you just identify the model, then you estimate the parameters of that model. In the most important stage, you go for diagnosis or diagnostic checking of the residual and also the model. If you find that your model is adequate, that means your model is validating all the assumptions, or the residuals are validating the assumptions for the error term, and also you are getting quite good percentage, within level the percentage error in terms of MAP or MAE, or in terms of any other statistics which you feel you need to compute. If you are satisfied in this stage, you go for forecasting for the future observations by using this model. But if you are not satisfied, that means any of the assumptions fail or the error percentage is quite high, then again you have to go back to the identification stage in order to fine tune your model so that the forecasting accuracy can be increased, the level of accuracy can be increased, and also in the diagnostic check, the validation of the assumptions ensures the assumptions mean for the error term. Similarly, as we are discussing that ARIMA X kind of model, that means in ARIMA model, in Box-Jenkins ARIMA model, if you want to include the information for the other variable, say for crop yield forecasting, you know that climate is one of the important factors which can be included in the model, because climate has a significant impact on the crop yield. So if you have the climatic information for the whole duration of the time point for which your yield data is available, for example, if your yield data is available from 1970 to say 2010 and yearly data, then yearly climatic variable, maybe in terms of rainfall, maybe in terms of the average temperature or so, if they are also available for that particular location, then that variable can also be included in the model. The step will be same. In code or in syntax, there will be a little difference, but it will be very easy to implement. But if you have that information and if you include that information in the model, you may it's more likely that you will be getting more accuracy. You can increase the accuracy level of your forecast. So for the functional form of the ARIMA X model, if you see the functional form here and compare with the functional form of the ARIMA model, here you can see one more extra term, that is in terms of the XT. This XT does include the other exogenous variable, maybe the climate or any other information which has some significant impact on the crop yield or on the dependent variable. So for example, if you are dealing with the price data, so in that case, again, climate can play an important role, and also the other variable like say arrival, total arrival in the market, it can also play an important role as an exogenous variable, which is also significantly impacting your price of the commodity. And if you include that particular variable in the model building stage or in the ARIMA model, then you may increase the level of accuracy for your forecasting. There are some application also. We'll be discussing those application and we'll apply some model in the real data set. There are other variants of the model. For example, if you are dealing with the seasonality, some seasonal kind of data, for example, monthly data. If you are dealing with the price of a particular commodity, the price you can collect the price as a monthly data or weekly data or daily data. So if you have a monthly data, that means 12 observations in a month, in a year, that means you are dealing with the seasonal data. If there is a significant seasonality, you can go for seasonal ARIMA model. Similarly, in climate data also, if you just observe the monthly rainfall in a particular location over the years, you will see that there is a seasonality, there is a seasonal pattern existed in that particular data set. So if there is a seasonal pattern existed in the data set, either you are considering a price data or climatic data or any other data which is being collected over seasonal time period, maybe over month, maybe over weeks, maybe over fortnight like this, or maybe over quarter. So if there is a seasonality in the data set, you can apply the seasonal ARIMA kind of model, which is also very easy to apply by using any software package, particularly R, which we will be dealing with today. This is the form of the seasonal model. All these things you can go for any of the textbook if you are interested uh, to know the details of the model buildings, the form of the model and estimation stage, all these things. You can refer to any textbook on the time series models. Now, the next thing is the nonlinear time series model. So in the linear time series model, we have learned about ARIMA model. We have discussed about ARIMA, that is autoregressive integrated moving average methods or moving average model. So ARIMA model is having three parts, you know. First is AR. You can have an AR model, that is autoregressive model, where you will only have autoregressive parameters and of course the differencing parameter. Then there is a moving average model. Here you will get the moving average parameter and of course the differencing parameter you may have. The third is the amalgamation of AR and MA, that is combination of AR and MA, which is called ARMA model, that is autoregressive moving average model, which does not consider the differencing because we are assuming that our original data or actual data is a stationary data. And if the actual data is non-stationary, then you go for differencing and we use the model called ARIMA, that is autoregressive integrated moving average model. Now all these models come under linear time series setup or linear time series domain. In most of the real data set, in most of the practical data set, either you consider a price data or yield data, you will see that there is much non-linearity existed in the data sets. That means the price, so for example, particularly price of a perishable crop, say price of a tomato, potato, like this, for a particular location, if you observe that, that data set does not follow linear pattern. There will be a sudden jump in the price, there will be a sudden hike in the price, and then again come back to the normal situations. And then the sudden jump and sudden dip in the price, it will persist for some time. That means some clusters of the observations will be very high or it will be very low in the overall pattern existed in the data set. If it happens, then you can assume that or you can guess that there is non-linearity in the data set, though there are some statistical tests in order to ensure that whether there is a non-linearity in the data set or not. And also there is another way when there is another situation when we actually come across this kind of model, is that during the validation stage of your model, for example, we are dealing with ARIMA model, and in the third stage, that is in the validation stage, we find that our residuals are autocorrelated, and sometimes the squared residuals are also autocorrelated. So in that case, if it happens, that means your ARIMA model building, whichever model you have built up for your linear time series, that is not adequate. And if the squared residuals of the fitted models are autocorrelated, it means that it indicates that there is a possibility of conditional heteroscedasticity in your data set. Conditional heteroscedasticity means, first of all, we understand what is heteroscedasticity. Heteroscedasticity means that the variance is non-constant. Okay. In error term of any model, in a linear time series model, we discussed that error follows IID normal 0 sigma square. So this sigma square is constant variance. That means homoscedastic error. If there is a non-constant variance in the error, then we say that this is heteroscedastic. So if in a fitted model, we find that these squared residuals are autocorrelated, that means there is a chance that the residuals is having heteroscedastic variance or heteroscedasticity is present in the residuals. Though there is a test called ARCH test, which is called as autoregressive conditional heteroscedastic test, ARCH LM test. That test can ensure you that whether actually conditional heteroscedasticity is present in the residuals or not. If that happens, if that is present, then only you can go for some nonlinear time series models like ARCH or GARCH model. Now, again, we will be discussing in details just to show you the functional form of this model. So here, this is, you can see the Bob-Jenkins ARIMA methodology has virtually dominated analysis of the time series data, because you know it is easy to apply and also easy to understand. But the limitation of this methodology is that it is not capable of modeling those data sets that depict volatility or conditional volatility. That means there is a sudden jump in the data set, or there is a sudden dip in the data set, and that persists for some times. Now, to overcome these situations, that means the limitation of the ARIMA model, Engel in 1982, he proposed this ARCH model, that is autoregressive conditional heteroscedastic model. And the form of the model is, here you can see, we are assuming that YT, which is our dependent variable or study variable, for example, it is a price data. So, the conditional distribution of YT given the information up to t minus 1, we are assuming that this is normal distribution with a zero mean and conditional variance as HT, right? So, conditional distribution of YT given the information up to t minus 1 is nothing but Gaussian distribution with zero mean and a conditional variance HT, where epsilon t is nothing but eta t into ht to the power half, where ht is the conditional variance, eta t, this we can consider as IID noise or white noise. Okay. Now again, the conditional variance ht in ARCH model, we assume that this conditional variance ht is a linear combination of the first squared error. ht, that is conditional variance, is nothing but the linear combination of the first squared error. You can see sum of ai into epsilon square t minus I. Okay. So in GARCH model, what is the difference? In GARCH model, we assume that the conditional variance ht is nothing but the linear combination of the first squared error as well as the linear combination of the first conditional variance. So two terms, conditional variance in a GARCH model is linear combination of first squared error as well as linear combination of the first conditional variances. The beauty of GARCH model over ARCH model is that here in GARCH model, in most of the data sets, we can represent the volatility by using GARCH 1-1 model. 1-1 means the ARCH order is 1 and GARCH order is 1. That means how many lag in the error term you are taking and how many lag in the conditional variance you are taking. These two. 1 and 1. If you are taking 1 lag in the error term, squared error term, so 1 and 1 lag in the conditional variance also. So your final order for the GARCH will be 1-1. Like this will be formulating the order of the model. In most of the cases, the GARCH 1-1 model will actually represent a wide variety of the data set. Okay. Okay. Now, in this data set, we will be actually observing that how this can be applied in real application. Before we go for the application, quickly, we just see that how different combination of the models can be formed or can be developed and they can be applied in the real data analysis. So till now, we have just discussed ARIMA model, that is linear time series model, or it is a Box-Jenkins model. We have discussed the different steps to be followed in model building, and the steps to be followed in the model building, whatever we have discussed in the ARIMA setup, that will remain same for the GARCH as well. That means in the nonlinear model as well, because the steps will be same. First of all, you have to identify the model. In the second stage, you need to estimate the unknown parameters. In the third stage, you need to validate your model, or you need to validate your model in terms of the residual diagnostics. And if you are satisfied in all these stages, then you go forward for forecasting the future value. So these are the 4 stages in model building for any kind of statistical models for which, by which you want to forecast the future observations. So the third component of our lecture today is the combination of the model. Now, by the name combination of the models, you can just understand that at least there will be 2 models, 2 different kind of models will be applied, and then we will be combine these 2 models in order to increase the accuracy of the forecast. Our main aim is in forecasting is to increase the accuracy of the forecast. That means how close my forecast will be to the actual value. For that, there are different machine learning techniques available nowadays, and the one of the oldest and widest applied machine learning techniques is, of course, the artificial neural network. You know, this is one of the most important machine learning techniques which is being applied in the time series forecasting as well. So I need not to describe it in detail because you might have some separate lecture for the machine learning.
Yes, sir. One lecture we have for this.
Yeah, so I'm just skipping it. My intention here is to just to show you that how we can combine different models. So just I'll be coming here in the hybrid methodology that, for example, we have a data set, and this methodology was proposed by Zhang in 2001. This methodology says that, for example, YT, we have a univariate time series data, right? It may be a price data, it may be yield data, or anything, whatever being collected over the time point. Now, we intuitively assume that in this data set, YT, we have at least two components. One is the linear part, another is the non-linear part. If we assume that in our data set, there are two parts. One is the linear part, another is the non-linear part. So we present accordingly that YT is nothing but the sum of LT and NT, where YT is our original data set, time series data. LT stands for the linear part, NT, capital NT, it stands for the non-linear part in the data. So these two components are to be estimated from the data set, because in a data set we are not provided with the linear part and the non-linear part. We are just provided with a particular data in a univariate setup. From that data, we need to extract these two components, and we have to forecast the actual price data or whatever data you are considering. So what the methodology is saying about the algorithm is that this methodology assumes linear and non-linear pattern in time series can be separately modeled by different models. That means two separate parts are there in a data set. One is a linear part, another is a non-linear part. And we assume that these two parts can be modeled separately. Second is, it assumes that the relationship between linear and non-linear components are additive. That means, as we have represented the model that YT equals to LT plus NT, so the linear part and non-linear part, they can be separately modeled and they can be added. So they are additive in nature. And finally, it assumes that the residuals from the linear model will contain only the non-linear part. Okay, so in a linear part, for example, linear model, that means ARIMA model. So in ARIMA model, if you apply in a particular data, it is obvious that ARIMA model will capture only the linear pattern existed in the data set. If we assume that in our data set, both the linear as well as non-linear pattern exists, and if you apply ARIMA model, so from that data set, only the linear pattern will be extracted by using the ARIMA model, and whatever remains in the residual, that will be the non-linear pattern. So these assumptions we can easily assume, and then, so what we have to follow in the step one, a linear time series model has to fit. If we are provided with a particular data in terms of a univariate time series, say YT, so first of all, in the first stage, we will be fitting a suitable ARIMA model to the data set in order to extract the linear part existed in the data. In the second stage, what we do, the residuals are obtained from the fitted model, and the residuals will contain only the nonlinear component, if at all there is a nonlinearity existed in your original data. So hybrid model is applicable, or combination of the model we only apply when there is a complexity in the data set. If the data is actually straightforward linear data, so there is no need to apply the combination of the models. If you see that by observing the pattern existed in the data set, if you see that there is a complexity in the data, complexity means there will be a sudden dip in the data, there will be a non-linearity existed in the data set, then only you can go for applying some combination of the model. So in the first step, we have applied the linear time series model like ARIMA, best fitted ARIMA model. In the second stage, we compute the residuals coming out from the fitted model, and we check for the non-linearity. We assume that there is a non-linearity existed in the residuals. So first of all, we compute the residuals, and in the third stage, we go for diagnosis of the residuals, okay, whether there is any correlation structure existed, and the residuals are tested for nonlinearity by using the statistical test, namely BDS test. This is also available in R. So you ensure that there is a clear nonlinearity existed in the residuals coming out from the fitted linear model. Then in the fourth stage, once you confirm that your residuals contain nonlinearity, then the residuals are modeled using a nonlinear model. Now, nonlinear models, you know, the nonlinear models times this model, they are arch model, there are GARCH models, there are family of the GARCH models. You know, there are several variants of the GARCH model, like your power GARCH model, like exponential GARCH model, like integer valued GARCH model. There are so many so many variants of the GARCH models which you can apply based on the pattern existed in the data set. And other than this, you can also call for some non-parametric technique, non-parametric machine learning technique like ANN, artificial neural network. You can also apply the support vector regression for extracting the non-linearity existed in your residual series, and which will ultimately give you the forecast for the non-linear pattern, that is NT. So in the step 5, finally the forecasted non-linear and non-linear components will be combined to obtain the aggregated forecast value. So these are the simple 5 steps for combining any models. If I just summarize these steps, so first of all, if you are provided with a data set, you visualize the data, you try to extract the pattern existed in the data set. If you feel that there is a complexity in the data in terms of the presence of nonlinearity, you can go for combination of the model. For going for combination of the model, first of all, you need to fit the linear time series model, that is, say for example, ADIMA model. So you choose the best fitted ADIMA model for the data under consideration. Once you fit the ADIMA model, the linear part existed in the data set is extracted in terms of the LT. Then you compute the residuals by simply deducting the predicted value from the actual value. Once you compute the residuals, you diagnose the residuals for any possible presence of correlation or nonlinearity by using BPS test or by simply visualizing the residuals. Once you confirm that there is a clear nonlinearity in the data set, then on the residual, you can apply some nonlinear models like autoregressive conditional heteroscedastic model or GARCH model or other variants of GARCH model, or also you can apply some machine learning techniques which can also capture more effectively the nonlinearity existed in the data set like ANN, artificial neural network, or support vector regression, like this. So from the residuals, you apply the model ARCH or ANN to capture the nonlinearity existed in the data set, that is the NT. And finally, you have two forecasts or two prediction. One is for linear term, that is LT. Another is for the nonlinear term, that is capital NT. So you just combine these two in order to get the forecast for the actual values. So this is combination of model, and this is simple combination of the model. Sometimes we need to combine the forecast not only by simply using the arithmetic sum. We can have some weighted sum also. That means, for example, linear part we can give some weight, and non-linear part also we can give some weightage, and we can get the final forecast by combining these two different forecasts, LT and NT. So what will be the architecture? For example, if you see this, for example, we have actual series. So we have two components, linear component and non-linear component. From the linear component, you just apply ARIMA model in order to capture the linear component existed in the data set. And for the non-linear component, after fitting the ARIMA model, you just extract the residuals and fit the GARCH model set. So non-linear component is fitted. Also linear component is fitted. Now you sum these two fit values, linear as well as non-linear, in order to forecast the series. Similarly, if you want to fit ANN, so architecture would be like this. Everything will remain same, only in the non-linear models, instead of GARCH, you just apply ANN and go for combining these two forecasts in order to get the final forecast for the series under consideration. Okay, so this is actually the algorithm which we can follow. This is the simple algorithm, and also you can apply it in real data application. There are other combination also, as I told you, that weighted combination of different models. That means giving different weights to the different forecast coming out from the different models in order to finally forecast the actual series. So now in the theoretical part, should we take questions if you have, or we should go for the practical straight away?
As per your wish.
Okay. So I think we can go for the practical part, because when we actually do the practical for the real data, then only we can have some queries, and we can solve those queries also. You can understand it much better.
Yes, sir. At last, can take it.
Yeah, yeah. So we have a data set. We have several data sets. I will just share you, or I will just show you the data set. So this is a data. If you just can see, this is a yield data. Yield of a crop. The crop is wheat, and the location is Kanpur. So this is yield data starting from 1971 onwards. And there are other variables also for this particular data. There are climatic variables like maximum temperature, minimum temperature, and other variables also. So for the application of univariate time series like ARIMA, we need to have a single variable data. That is, for example, yield data will be enough for application. And if you want to apply this ARIMA X kind of model, that means inclusion of some exogenous variable, then you can include these exogenous variables, which are significantly impacting the yield. So this is the data set. And if you just plot this data, so if you just in Excel itself, if you just plot the data, you will see the data set pattern is like this. Okay. Now we'll directly go to R. So is it visible properly, or should we increase the size?
Zoom in will be good, sir.
Yeah, just a minute. So I'll be. Is there any difference? I'm zooming in.
It's okay, sir.
Oh, now it's okay.
Right.
Okay. So you know, for application of the R, so I'm sure that R class is already over. So you know how to import the dataset and how to write down the basic program in R. Just to import the dataset and then followed by writing down some steps for model building.
One lecture.
So,
on R, sir.
Okay, it was done. So importing of the dataset, there are several ways. So I like to import the data in terms of the CSV format. That means read.csv. So I save the dataset in a CSV format, comma separated value format, and as such that data I want to import. So simple command that data, this is user defined dataset name followed by equality, then read.csv, this is reading the data or importing the data, and then you just give the path of the file, okay, along with the name of the file and the extension. Of course, after this inverted comma, you will just put header equals to true, so that the first row of the data set, it indicates that they are the levels of the data or the variables. So this is, I do not think that we need to elaborate all these steps. Once I import the data, I simply attach this data. The attachment does mean that whatever variables are existed in that particular data, all those variables are now attached to the current R environment. And all those variables are now accessible by their name. And to see the names of the data set, if you just click on these names, so you'll see that these many variables are existed: year, yield, maximum temperature, mean dot temperature, like this. These are many variables we are having. So we'll be dealing with only a univariate series, that is yield data for application of the ARIMA model, and we'll be incorporating some of the exogenous variable like maximum temperature or minimum temperature in order to apply the ARIMA X kind of models. So first of all, what we require is that, we have already plotted the data in Excel. We have seen that the existing pattern existed in the data set. Now the first step in the model building. What is the first step? Before we actually call upon the model building stage, what we need to do is we need to validate the assumptions meant for the model. So the assumptions are, first of all, linearity because we are applying the linear kind of model ARIMA, and also we have seen the pattern existed in the data set in Excel. It was almost increasing pattern in the yield. So linearity existed. You can again see the plot. The second assumption is most crucial, that is the stationarity assumption. The stationarity assumption, it indicates that the mean and variance of the data set and also mean variance and covariance of the data set is constant over the time point. So to see this, any of the tests like augmented decoupleur test, like Phillips-Perron test, like KPSS test, these are the three popularly known tests for testing the stationarity existed in the data set. They can be applied. And all these tests are available in the R package called T series. So you can see library T series, that means this particular package T series has to be loaded. So I just run this library T series. Okay. Then once you have loaded this T series package, next you have to ensure that your data set follows stationarity. For example, I apply ADF test. So ADF.test is the keyword to apply this to test for stationarity in the data set. ADF.test within bracket the yield. You have to spell the right variable name yield. That is why you have printed the names data. So yield Y is capital because R is case sensitive software. Therefore, whatever variables, whatever keyword, whatever output, anything, any name you are creating, you have to create it or you have to spell it correctly. ADF.test within bracket the variable name. If you run this one, you'll see yield is not Y. I misspelled it. So YIELD. Now you can see the output. Okay. Now there are three types in the ADF test. Whenever you apply this augmented decoupleur test, there are three types. Type 1, no drift, no trend. Second type with drift, no trend. Third type with drift and trend. In original data, if you see, that is why it is very much crucial to observe the existed pattern in the data set by plotting it first. So in Excel, when we plotted the data set, we found that there is a increasing trend in the data set. So that means what type we need to follow here is the third type. Okay. And you can see the p-value is 0.02. The first thing, the p-value is 0.02, which indicates that the ADF test is significant. 0.02 is, I'm sorry, just you see the lag at the same time, you can also see the lag. So finally, p-value is 0.01. At the final stage, you will be given with the p-value that is 0.01, but this is a note and it means that whatever p-value will be printed through these ADF tests, that is actually lesser than that. So for this note is given. Now to interpret the test. So first of all, you need to know that what is the null hypothesis in the test. Whenever we apply any kind of test, you need to ensure that what is the null hypothesis. In ADF test, the null hypothesis is that our data is non-stationary and the alternative is the data is stationary. Okay. Null hypothesis is data is non-stationary, alternate is data is stationary. So in ADF, you can see there is a lag value, then there is a ADF value, test statistics value, and then there is a p-value. So at 0th lag, you need not to observe it because in time series data, you must have a lag. In ADF, either it is a 1 lag or 2 lag or 3 lag like this. Okay. So you see that at least for the 1 lag, the p-value is 0.60, which means that the test is not significant. That means null hypothesis is not rejected. So non-stationarity exists in the data set. Am I clear? So non-stationarity exists in the data set by using ADF test in the yield data. And from the plot also we saw that there is an increasing trend in the data set. Also the variability is not constant throughout the time period. So obviously there will be non-stationarity in the data set, and we get that non-stationarity also. So to make the stationary data set stationary, what we do? We apply ADF.test within bracket the difference data. That means DIFF within bracket the yield. Now you will see, you run this one and you will see the p-value now. Now all the p-values are up to second lag. You can see the p-value is 0.01, which indicates that after one differencing, your data has become stationary. Because you are rejecting null hypothesis, at 5% level, p-value is 0.01. That means at 5% level of significance, if you are rejecting the null hypothesis, that means you are inferring that your data has become stationary now. So after one differencing, your data has become stationary now. This is the first stage. Before we call for model building stage, this is the first stage in validating the assumptions made for the model. So that means we have now computed that D value, differencing value is 1. One differencing is required in order to transform your non-stationary variable to a stationary one. Okay. Second stage is identification. What we identify now? We identify the orders of AR and MA. So for that you need to see the two plot, ACF and PSF, as I told you. ACF of now on the different series, not on the original series, right? Because now we will be dealing with the different series, stationary series. So if you see the ADA, ACF, so you will see this is the ACF, autocorrelation function plot. And if you remember, autocorrelation function plot will give you the order of moving average, and partial autocorrelation function plot will give you the order of autoregression. So here by seeing this ACF plot, that is autocorrelation function plot, you will see that only one lag is significant. The dotted blue color line parallel to your x-axis, it is nothing but the critical region. Any of the spike crossing this line, either in the upper side or in the lower side, that particular spike will be significant. So here, the first spike, it was the 0th lag, which need not to be observed. The first lag onwards, you need to observe the significance of the autocorrelation function. So the first lag only is significant and others are not significant. That means ACF plot gives you the MA order. So MA order is 1. Here, similarly, the partial autocorrelation function, which gives you the order of AR, if you just run it, so here also you will see here the lags are 1 onwards, 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, and only one lag is significant. So AR order is also 1. So ACF plot, which gives the MA order, which we saw that it is 1. PSCF plot, which gives the AR order, here also we see that AR order is 1. So the order of the model here is now 1, 1, 1. That is ARIMA 1, 1, 1 model. First one is for autoregression. Second one is for differencing. We have differentiated the data set one time. And third one is for moving average. Okay. Now this is preliminary identification of the model. So to reach to the final model, what we need to do is fixing the D order, that means differencing order, you need to vary or you need to see the combination of different values for AR and MA. For example, AR is 1, MA is 1. So you need to compute AR1, MA0, or as well as MA0, AR0 and MA1. That means 3 model we need to run, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0 and 0, 1, 1. These are the 3 models we need to run, and by seeing the information criteria, by seeing the Akaike information criteria or Bayesian information criteria or log likelihood, we need to analyze the model. For the model, for which model the information criteria is the minimum, that particular model will be selected as the final. Okay. So preliminary order identification is done. Now what you need to do is you have to apply the model. So for application of the model, you simply write down this ARIMA. So for that, the forecast package has to be loaded, library forecast. This you run it because this ARIMA model and automatic ARIMA building model, all these functionality exist in the forecast package. So library forecast, you run this code, then you run the ARIMA model. I have just put model as the output, followed by keyword ARIMA, within bracket the yield data. Yield is the original yield data. Why I am not using the difference here? Because in the order I will be putting d equals to 1. That is why I have not put difference of yield. So in the original data, if you in the order, if you specify the order of differencing, then there is no need to specify here the difference data. So ARIMA within bracket the yield or the response variable, followed by order. Order equals to C within bracket. The ARIMA order contains 3 arguments. First is for AR, second is for differencing, and third is for MA. So initially we have seen that our order is 111. So I run this model and you just summarize this model in terms of summary and ARIMA. Okay. So summary, if you just see here, sorry, we have already attached the data set, yield Y capital. Again we have, now you see summary. Again there is a problem. Just a minute. Summary of model, sorry. So I was just committing mistake because the output variable is model. So you just have to write down model within bracket summary. So if you see this one, you will see the model output. You can see AR1, MA1, and when you go for this differencing order 1, so you are actually ignoring the intercept term, because if you difference the data set, intercept term has no meaning there. So 2 parameters AR1 and MA1 will be printed, their coefficient along with their standard error. Here you can see the AR1 is significant because if you find out the ratio of the coefficient and the standard error, this will actually give you the T statistics, the calculated value of the T statistics. So here it will be more than 2 for the first case. AR1 will be significant, but not the MA1. And also if you see the AIC value, the information criteria, it is 195.78. Noting that, now once you see the estimate of the parameters, you will find that one parameter which is not significant. So keeping this insignificant parameter in the model does not gain anything, because you are just increasing the complexity of the model by increasing the number of parameters in the model. If this parameter is not significant, that means it is not contributing anything towards the variability of the yield. So we need to ignore this one. So that is why I told that there are different ways or different combination of these parameters values. You need to, the order of the values you need to see. So 111 we have run. Now we run 110 like this, and again we see there what is the model. So MA order we have just ignored because it was not significant. AR order is significant, and here AIC is 193. Earlier you can see what is the AIC, 195. So now for this particular model, our information criteria value is minimum. About this, for these 2 models, this is giving you the minimum value. So this is much better. Similarly, the other, that is 011 also you can run, and you can see whether the parameter is significant and what are the fate of this information criteria value. So if you see this, the final model will be this one only, 110. So this will be the final model, and if you compute the prediction of this model, just go for predicting this model, and all these things, whatever we have done till now, that is by validating the assumptions of stationarity or checking the stationarity of the data set by using ADF test or any other test, and then followed by observing ACF and PACF in order to identify the order of AR and MA model, and then finally applying this ARIMA model to estimate the parameters. So all these things can be done automatically if you just call auto ARIMA function. Auto ARIMA function, if you just run, so here you can auto.arima within bracket yield. Okay, if you do this one and then summary, then summary of ARIMA. So you'll see here, same thing, the model is giving you 110. Earlier also by using ARIMA model by following the different steps in model building, we have seen that ARIMA 110 was the final model. So here also in automatic ARIMA model building, here also it is giving you the ARIMA 110 model. Okay, and so if you want to apply automatic model building, though it is not advisable, at least I don't advise to go for automatic ARIMA model, because in that case you do not you do not actually use your expertise during model building. So you can see what if there is any non-significant parameter existed in the model, that has to be ignored, and fine tuning of the model is not possible in case of the automatic ARIMA model. So there it will follow whatever steps has been in the backend. So those steps will only be followed. So it is always advisable to go by this ARIMA model by following the steps whatever has been discussed. Now after this thing, so you just go for computing the fitted value and then forecast. So if you want to say extract the fitted value, so fit equals to fitted within bracket model, then we will be getting the fitted value. And the beauty of this is, once you print the summary model, you will see that the different statistics are also being printed. Mean error, root mean square error, mean absolute error, okay, mean prediction error, mean absolute percentage error, like this. These are all useful for the validation of the model in terms of the validating the model, that how close your forecast is towards the actual value. That means percentage error, it is less than 10%, 9.36%, the RMSE and all other statistics. If you want to compare with the other models, if you apply for the same data set, and then if you compare and then choose the best model, so you can use these statistics in order to choose the best model in terms of the accuracy of the forecasting. So if you want to extract the fitted value, just go for fitted within bracket model. Then if you want to see the residual, so resid equals to residuals within bracket the model. So residuals are, if you want to print, so these are the residuals. If you want to print the fitted value, so these are the fitted value. Okay, actual values are also with you, so you can tally how good your fit is by using this model. Now once you have already extracted the residuals, on the residuals you can actually see how the assumptions of the residuals, whether they are valid or not. So simply you just put sapilo.test for testing the normality of the residual within bracket resid. You will see that Sapiro will normality test, it gives you p-value 0.95. Of course, the null hypothesis is that the data follows normality, alternate is data is non-normal. So here the residual says that the residual coming out from the model, ARIMA model, is normal. Okay. Similarly, other things like autocorrelation, presence of autocorrelation of the residuals can also be tested by simply visualizing the ACF and PACF of the residuals, the plot as you plotted in the yield data. Okay. Now, just one more thing, when you are trying to build this model, ARIMA, all these things, then if you have the information for the other exogenous variable, you can just put those exogenous variable like this, xreg, exogenous regressor variable, equals to, in my case, whatever I have given, that is data is there. So data, and the third column is for the maximum temperature. So if you want to include more than one regressor variable, so you just give 3 to some column reference, say 4 regressor variable, third column and fourth column for the dataset under consideration, both the regressor variable will be included in the model. If you want to include only one, so you have to decide that which particular regressor variables are having some significant impact on the variable under consideration, that is all the yield variable. So here I know from the data set that maximum temperature is having some significant impact. So only one regressor variables let us include and see the model. So this is the model and this is the summary. You can see one more coefficients for the regressor will be printed. So this is the coefficient, this is the standard error. You can easily see the t statistics, and these are the validation statistics. So if you can compare with the earlier one, earlier you can see MA was 0.81, RMSE 2.70. So here you can see MA is 0.79, RMSE 2.6, little lower than the earlier. So little improvement in the forecast by incorporating one exogenous variable. Likewise, you can include more and more exogenous variables in the model if you feel that those exogenous variables are having some significant impact on the yield data. Now, similar way, you go for computing the residuals and all those things, and then see for presence of autocorrelation and nonlinearity in the residuals. Now, in the residuals, again, I just see the residuals. I have extracted the residuals. Okay. Now, the next thing what we have to do is we directly go towards the nonlinear model, that is Arch model and Garch model. So for that, what is required, that after fitting the linear time series model, if you see that there is some violation in the assumptions of the residuals in terms of maybe the residuals are autocorrelated, or the square residuals are autocorrelated, or there is a clear conditional heteroscedasticity present in the data set, then only you can apply the Garch type of model. So in order to check that whether the Arch test, that is Arch test is for testing the presence of conditional heteroscedasticity in the residual. So what we have to do, so in model statement we have done this model statement, and Arch test is available in a package called ATSA. So this is the package where you can find this function Arch test, and if you just apply this, you see that this is the output for the Arch test. You can see Portman to Q test, which is actually testing the autocorrelation present in the residual series, and second is Lagrange multiplier test, which is Arch test basically. That means the squared residuals, whether they are autocorrelated and there is a significant presence of conditional heteroscedasticity in the residual. So you'll find that at lag 4 or order 4, you have a p-value 0.03 and LM statistics is 8.6. For testing Arch LM test, the null hypothesis is that there is a significant Arch effect, or there is an Arch effect, and alternate is there is no Arch effect. Sorry, there is no Arch effect is the null hypothesis, and alternate is there is Arch effect. So here, if you see the first, that means at lag 4, your p-value is 0.03, which is less than 0.05. It indicates that Arch test is significant. That means there is a significant presence of Arch effect in the residuals of the fitted model. Okay. So in this yield data, when you incorporated one regressor variable in the data set, though you improve some efficiency or some accuracy in the model, but ultimately in the residual diagnostic, it says that there is presence of conditional heteroscedasticity in the residual series. That means there is a kind of nonlinearity existed in the variance in the residuals. Therefore, you need to apply, you can apply Garch type of model or families of Garch model to capture these conditional heteroscedasticity. And for doing so, what you have to do is you have to fit the Garch model. And this Garch model is available in the package called fgarch. So this package you need to remember. If you don't remember, you just Google it. You just type that Garch model in R, you will be directed with the package where these functionality are available. So fgarch is the package where the functionality of the Garch model is available. So I'll just delete all these things because it is library fguards. Once it is installed, once it is loaded, then so you can just fit the guards model by simply from the fguards package. If you go to the help of the fguards package, you will find that there is a guards fit. So writing will take some time. That is why I'm just copying that. So guards fit is the keyword. In the formula, you need to specify the mean, that is mean model. What is that mean model? It is AR1 model, or it is MA1 model, or it is ARMA model, followed by the guard specification order 1-1. In most of the cases, if you are applying the guards model, it will be 1-1. And you can change this by seeing the parameter estimates. Then data set, you have to specify the data set, which data you want to apply this one. Okay. So data is our original data is data, and on the individual says, that means on the second variable, because the first variable is the year, second variable is the yield. So from the data, we are just specifying that apply guards model on the second column, that means yield data. Include dot means is true. If you want an intercept in the model, so you just put include dot mean as true, otherwise keep it false. So if you just run this one, so this is your guards model. It has run. Whole output, if you see, ARMA specification, we have specified the mean model as AR model, AR10, guard specification, guards 1-1, okay. And then all these things, parameter, final parameter estimate, if you just scroll down, you will see that final parameter estimates are given here. These are the final parameter estimates. So just I'll put this one. Okay. So here you can see the final parameter estimate. That is intercept is 2.2, AR1 is this one, omega is for the variability. If you remember that HT equation, that conditional variance equation for a guards model, so it includes one alpha 1 and one beta 1. Alpha 1 is for the coefficient of the squared error, beta 1 is the coefficient for the past conditional variance. So all these parameters are here, okay. And you can see for other parameters, the standard error are not computed because guards model is nonlinear. So there may be some convergence problem in this model. That is why they are not coming. But you need not to worry. The parameter estimates are coming, and beta 1 is very close to 0. That means you can put 0 here instead of guards 1-1. You can put 0 here, and you can go for seeing the estimates. So here you can see beta 1 has not been estimated. It was almost 0. So we have just ignored that particular model, and we have used the others one. So this way you can get the estimates of the parameters for the guards model. And then if you want to extract the fitted value, simply write down fitted equals to slot, guards, and fitted. So we'll get the fitted value for this guards model. Then if you want to extract the forecasted value, so forecast will be predict. Then the model output guards 10 dot ahead equals to set 10. That means 10 step ahead you want the forecast. So whatever, for example, here we have the data up to 2010. So if you want the yield to be forecasted for the next 10 years, so you just put n dot ahead equals to 10 and will be given the forecast. Okay. Similarly for the ARIMA model also, though we did not show you that forecast, in ARIMA model also, in the model, once you have run this model, so here also you can run the forecast. If you just write down here forecast equals to forecast within bracket the model and say lead equals to 10. Okay, here. So why this error is coming? This is because we have included some exogenous regressor variable in the model, and if you want to forecast the yield, you need to have the forecast value for the exogenous variable. So exogenous variable, for exogenous variable, you need to compute the forecast first, then only you can forecast the yield. So by using simple ADIMA model without considering the exogenous variable, if you want to forecast, so you just see here and you will see this is the forecast value by using ADIMA model. So for this particular data, yield data up to this 2010, you had the data and you are getting the forecast, this red colored line, this is the forecast with their confidence interval with the shaded region. This is the plot, and also the forecast values you can get it here. Up to 40 observations we had the data, and for next observation 41 to 50 we had the forecast value along with the standard error, lower and upper confidence interval. This is 95% confidence interval. So this way you can get the forecast as well as confidence interval for ADIMA as well as for the GARDS model. Now the third part, quickly I will just tell you, then we'll see the questions. So third part is the combination of the model. So quickly if we see from the first model, that is by using the ADIMA model, if you extract the residuals, we have already extracted the residual. These residuals we have extracted, and if you see the residuals, these are the residuals. Okay, these are the residuals coming out. In these residuals, if you want to apply some kind of model, say ANN model, GARDS model we have already applied by not only on the residuals but on the actual data by specifying the mean model itself in the GARDS. So whenever we applied GARDS model, we specified the mean model first, followed by GARDS. That means first you fit a linear this mean model to the actual series, extract the residuals, and on that residuals you are fitting the GARDS model. This is one way, same thing. Similarly for the ANN model, in this ADIMA model, once you have computed the residuals coming out from the best fitted linear model, on the residuals if you find there is some nonlinearity present in the residuals or there is some autocorrelation present in the residuals, though we have seen that there is a conditional heteroscedasticity present in the residuals for the fitted ADIMA model. So we can apply GARDS model as well as we can apply kind of ANN model in order to increase the accuracy of the forecast or in order to capture the nonlinearity present in the residual series. So on the residuals, we have captured this residual is in terms of receipt. So on the receipt, we can fit the neural network model, say, and this neural network is already available in the forecast package itself. So in the forecast package, if you just put NNETAR, this is the keyword or functionality for fitting the neural network, artificial neural network, to a series. There are so many arguments which you can pass, but the necessary argument is you need to pass the variable, that for which particular variable you want to fit the model. For example, we have already seen that in the residual series we have some kind of nonlinearity in terms of the conditional heteroscedasticity, the residual which is coming out from the best fitted ADIMA model for the yield data. So on these residuals there is some information still available which we can extract by using some advanced kind of model. So that is why you are applying neural network or other kind of model. So if you just apply this NNETAR on the receipt, though we have several options to be passed, there are several arguments we can pass through this NNETAR functionality. Those, if you explore more and more, you can understand that. Due to paucity of time, we are just giving the arguments which are necessary. So NNETAR within bracket receipt, that means fitting the neural network model. Here, this is the architecture of the neural network model, and this is the error variance which is coming out from this fitting of neural network model. After you fit this one, you can extract the fitted value. Say fit neural network equals to say fitted within bracket. Before that, you just give a output name for the NNETAR and then this one. So here this is the fit, and here you can see this is the fitted value. Similarly, if you want to forecast some points ahead. So you just put forecast within bracket NN and H equals to say 10. So here it is not H, but I think N dot ahead. There is some issues. It may happen in R due to some other packages. So, but the keyword is forecast itself. So to see the exact arguments to be passed, you just go to the forecast package. Go to the forecast package, and then you go for NNETR. That is, you click on N. You go NNETR. This is neural network time series forecast. Here you can see what are the arguments to be passed on. Y is the univariate time series which you need to pass, followed by several arguments. You have the option to pass on, and what particular argument does what thing, they are described here. If you scroll down below, you will find that there is an example here. For every particular functionality, there is an example which describes that how to run this particular function or this particular model for your data. So if you copy any of these syntax and run on your own data, you will get that. So this is forecast, state, and H equals to something. This should work. This is actually the syntax is this one. So here unused argument, there is some issues it is giving, but it should not. My system may have some problem, but actually the syntax is this one. You can try on your system. This is the arguments which you have to pass on to get the forecast through neural network. Okay, and once you get this forecasted value, you have already got the fitted value in terms of fit underscore ANN, and from the ARIMA model also you got the fitted value. So with that fitted value, that is linear part, if you add on this nonlinear fitted value, so you will be getting the fitted or predicted values for the actual series. Okay. So this way, if you explore more and more, you will actually understand that how you can build up your model more accurately or more precisely in order to increase the forecast of your model. So now I think we should take a few questions. Or
yes, sir. Questions are there. Q and answer section.
okay. So in chat, right?
Q and A section, sir.
Q&A section. Okay. So from the beginning, I'll just see.
Hanuman Sinde is asking in time series which method is best.
Okay, please repeat. What is the question?
Hanuman Sinde is asking in time series which method is best.
Okay, there is no method which is best for universally based for all kind of data set. As I told you, in the linear time series, if you have a linear pattern existed in the data set, then of course you go for applying the ARIMA kind of model. If you have non-linearity in the data, don't rely on the ARIMA model, because in that case you will be misinterpreted. So you have to go for GARS model or kind of machine learning technique like ANN or SBR. Okay.
At bottom fourth icon is Q&A section.
Yes, sir.
Here.
Someone has asked, will you share the comment file? Yes, I can share the comment files to you, to the host, and then they can share to all the participants. I don't
Sir,
have any issue.
you are seeing in chat Q&A section, fourth icon, bottom.
Okay. First one is, can ARIMA model be used for forecasting the milk production? What should be the minimum length of time series data required for ARIMA model?
Yeah.
Definitely, we can use the ARIMA model for milk prediction. Even we have a paper published in forecasting the milk yield. Okay, by using ARIMA model. In general, the thumb rule is you have to have 30 observations at least if you are considering yearly data, so 30 years data. If you are considering the monthly data, then 5 to 6 years data even will be enough to build the model. Okay. Then Bitan has questioned, sir, how can you visualize if the data has only drip or only trend and no drip? Is there any real world example? Is there? Okay. Actually, whenever we visualize a particular data, we always can visualize the trend existed in the data set most of the time. So drip, whenever there is a trend in the data set, accordingly that particular type of test we need to apply. For example, ADF test with trend. Okay, ADF test with trend, that has to be observed. Then someone asked for time series data forecasting, what is the minimum size of data set? I have already answered that generally 30 data is the minimum data to be required. If you have more data, more observations, then it is always nice, but at least 30 observations is required to build up an ARIMA model. And for nonlinear time series model, we go for 50 and above. This is thumb rule only, there is no strict rule, because if you go by statistics, then only it depends on the number of parameters you are having. So if you have 2-3 parameters to be estimated and you leave degrees of freedom for the error to be 10-12, then precisely 14-15 or 20 observations will be enough. But from model point of view, for modeling point of view, for linear time series model, it is at least 30 observations. For nonlinear time series model, it will be at least 50 observations. How to do the SARIMA in R, how to incorporate the seasonality component. If you are calling auto.arima in R, then automatically seasonality will be incorporated. If you are providing the seasonal data to R and you are calling auto.arima model, then automatically your SARIMA component will be included and it will be displayed in your output. Okay. Someone has asked, what is the reason behind running all the 3 types, even though we clearly identified the order and differencing using the test? Yeah, to answer this question, actually, if you remember, we told that this is preliminary identification of the order in the first stage. That means we are just gauging the order to start with. So by using ACF and PACF model, PACF plot, we have initiated the order. And final model will always be selected based on the information criteria value. Either you go by selecting the model based on AIC, or you go by selecting the model by using log likelihood or Bayesian information criteria. That is necessary. If you are following the steps which we have described by using simple ARIMA keyword in the forecast package, then you need to run different models and selecting the model based on information criteria. If you are just simply using auto.arima, then you did not to select the best, because it will give you only the one and that is the final. Okay. Then how far R software is advantage over other software for time series analysis? R software, one of the advantages, it is free, open access. So that's why, and also it is authentic. There are so many packages are being developed every day. If you go to CRAN website, you will find that there is thousands of packages are there in R. For every particular model or every particular algorithm, there is a separate package. So it's very easy to implement new algorithm also which are coming up nowadays. What is the code to add the value of ANN and ARIMA to forecast through hybrid methodology? That code we have already discussed, that you apply ARIMA, you apply ANN and extract the forecasted value or fitted value, and then simple arithmetic sum of the two fitted value. So that code is not that much difficult. You just write a variable equals to the linear part L plus n the non-linear part. Time series application for agronomist also. Yes, you can apply time series any data set which is being collected over time, equally spaced. Okay, the time series, if you are collecting the data yearly, every year you must have the data. If you are collecting the data monthly, every month you must have the data. If you have data in this manner, then any domain you can apply this technique. To predict what method is good, I have already answered that if you are applying the linear time series model, then ARIMA is the best. If you are applying non-linear, there is no particular model which is best, but you can apply different kind of model like GARCH, ANN, and you can select the particular model based on the validation test. That means which particular model gives you the minimum error, that model will be the best one. In tree species, we have data for 13 years. Can we use ADIMA model? Here I have already answered that if you have 30 years data at least, then your ADIMA model will give you quite precise estimate. But if you do not have the data, even 13 observations also you can apply. Statistically you can apply, but how good accuracy will come, that you need to see after application. One question, how to go about ADIMA if the data is not available for certain months on regular basis? Say no data for May, June, July every year. Can we make it as continuous time series data? Obviously you can make it May, June, July if for all the year the data is missing. That means you can assume that for a particular year we have 9 months data, right? So 9 months data continuously year wise you just put it and you apply simple ADIMA kind of model. If we forecast the price through ADIMA or SARIMA, what is the validity period for forecasted prices? If I understand the question correctly, validity period means up to what step you can forecast. So if this is the question, then generally we advise that you go for short-term forecasting. Short-term forecasting means up to 5 points. Okay, for example, if you are considering yearly data, you go for forecasting up to next 5 years. If you are considering monthly data, in there we can forecast for a whole year, that means 12 months. Okay, long-term forecast in general is not advisable by using this kind of model. But if you have to do this long-term forecast, so I will advise that you go for short-term forecast first. Say for example, you go for forecasting next 5 years, and then you consider that forecast data as actual. Again, run the model to get the forecast for the next 5 years. Likewise, you can go for forecasting the long term. Is there restriction for forecasting? That's what I told you. Next, in different SW, different value, get of ADIMA model fitting in SPSS. Different model is best fit. Another, it gives different how to identify. I don't understand the question. In different software, different value get for ADIMA model fitting in SPSS different. Yes, different software may give you different model because the estimation technique working in the backend for individual software is different, but the difference in output should not be that significant. For example, if you are getting the error coefficient in R as 0.56, you may get the error coefficient in SPSS as 0.54 or 0.58. And it should be significant in both the software, but it cannot happen that in R you are getting highly significant result, but in SPSS you are not getting. It should not happen. If it happens, then there is some problem. Software to software, there may be some variation. This is because the methodology or estimation technique which is invoked in the backend of the software may be different. How can I do price forecasting with R? Similar way as we did the forecasting for the yield data for this particular series, similar way we can go for forecasting the price data. Okay, and there are several papers also available, so you can follow those papers as well.
Again, sir, similar question we have from Facebook. Which software? The question is from Bir Singh Chauhan from Facebook. He is asking which software is best, SPSS or R?
Again, depicting the best software is very difficult, but I will prefer R because you have more. You can customize your model building in R in more general way. In SPSS, you may not have that many options to customize your model.
Okay, sir. I think we have covered most of the questions. Also, all questions almost we have covered.
Okay.
Okay. Sir, on behalf of ICAR National Institute of Agriculture Economics and Policy Research and all the participants, we thank you for delivering very informative and useful lecture on time series analysis covering both theory as well as practical aspects. Sir, both on Zoom as well as Facebook live platform that we are using for this lecture, we are getting very good feedback and we are really thankful to you for today's session. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Binayak and Dr. Abhimanyu, and also all the participants for attending. attending this session, and I also enjoyed discussing this topic and also answering the question raised by the participants. Thank you all. I have also given my mail ID, so if you have any questions in future also, you don't hesitate to contact. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dear participants, tomorrow we will be learning social network analysis with Dr. Subhash SP from National Institute of Agriculture Economics and Policy Research, New Delhi. Thank you very much for active participation and learning. We'll meet tomorrow at 4 p.m. Till then, goodbye from me and my co-host, Dr. Abhimanyu. Thank you very much.